Are you wondering what elementary school library teachers actually do all day? In this video, I'm about to tell you that it's not just all about the books. My name is Dawn. I'm a retired school librarian, and I am going to fill you in on exactly what fills the day of a school librarian. So let's go. If you decide to become an elementary school librarian, the biggest part of your day will consist of planning, prepping, and teaching library classes. I had a professor when I was a library student many years ago, and he was a 30-year veteran of the elementary school librarian, and he taught a children's literature class. And one of the things that he told us that always stuck with me was that, remember, you are a teacher first and a librarian second. And when I look back on all my years of being an elementary school librarian, no truer words were spoken. You will be planning, prepping, teaching, depending on your school district. Some school districts have flexible schedules, but many have fixed schedules. And by that, that means that you will have scheduled classes that come and visit you every single day. And in the building that I worked in for 12 years as an elementary school library teacher, we had about 600 students, and each class came to the library once a week for 30 minutes. So the way the classes were broken down, that meant that I always had at least 30 classes every single week coming to the library. The students were getting a lesson, usually a lesson aligned with the learning standards. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade also did projects and research in addition that were graded for report cards. So you had 30 minutes to transition the students in, have your lesson, check out books, and then be back on the line ready for the teacher. So a very dynamic pace in the library always needed to be kept so that everything could be accomplished in those 30 minutes. So your job as a planner and a prepper is to make sure those 30 minutes flow as seamlessly as possible and that you are able to accomplish everything in that very rigid amount of time. For the most part in my elementary career, there was only 1 or 2 minutes passing time, which meant there was only 1 or 2 minutes from the time one class walked out of the door until the next class walked in. So you really had to prep all of your supplies, all of your lessons, and have everything like ready to go every minute, because there's no downtime in the library while you are setting up in between classes. Something to keep in mind. Also, in addition to the regular classes, which I had kindergarten through 5th grade, so 6 grade levels, we also had special ed in our building. So I always had at least 3 special ed classes, sometimes more. And although I could change and modify a lot of the lessons that I did in my regular classes to accommodate the special ed students, that was also extra planning and extra prep. And honestly, I would consider any self-contained special ed class a grade level onto itself. So it's really like another whole planning and prep, because it's such an individual situation. So building on your planning and prep, one of the things that you will do as the library teacher in an elementary school is you will often collaborate with other teachers and grade or entire grade levels or administration, or maybe some of the other special area teachers, such as the art teacher or the music teacher. Part of the collaboration might be with the planning. There were certain projects that I did with grade levels, for example, second grade, where I would ask the teachers to help me pair up the students with a strong reader, with a reader that might not be as capable. When we did a research project, I could pair them up in an appropriate way so they could help each other. So there were other times where there would be a grade level meeting. It might be your responsibility to attend that grade level meeting so that you could support the curriculum through your library lessons. That was often another part of your day that you had to address. Collaboration, and just not even necessarily collaboration, but just constant communication. Another chunk of collaboration time would be with the special ed teachers, maybe the social worker, the psychologist, the speech and reading teachers, because you always wanted the most information about your students, but especially the special ed students, so that you knew what their capabilities were so that you could plan accordingly. Another responsibility as a school library teacher was to help with school-wide events that were extra things that supported reading and literacy, such as your building book fair. Most elementary schools have a book fair once or twice a year, and some librarians in their buildings are responsible for running the book fair. In my building, it was the Parent-Teacher Association, or the PTA, that ran the book fair, and they did a fabulous job, and I was pretty hands-off with the book fair. I didn't have any responsibilities with it, but a lot of library teachers do run the book fairs for their buildings. Sometimes they use their library space, or they use other spaces in the building, but there's a lot of phone calls and planning and coordination to do that. It's a big job, so I was pretty grateful that the PTA, in my situation, they were the ones running it, and it worked out great. One responsibility that you may have as the school librarian is bulletin boards and display cases and things outside of your library space itself. So inside of your library, you probably have, display areas, the top of the bookshelf, possibly a bulletin board. But outside within the building itself, there might be areas that are your responsibility to create displays and rotate on a seasonal basis. So I did not have a bulletin board immediately outside of my library, but there was a display case in the front of the building in the lobby that was a built-in glass display case in the wall. And so the art teacher and myself, we alternated times where it was our responsibility, our month or our season, that we had to change it out. So that is more planning and prep that you would have to do, some creative idea that you would come up with in order to create that display for your building. So, and that would be something that your building administrator would decide that they want. And if they want you to be the one to do it, then it's your job. One part of my job was staff development, and this could be on a formal basis or an informal basis, but again, a lot of what you do in your building is going to be decided by your administrator in the building. And every principal has their own thoughts on what it is that they want you to do or what they think your responsibility is. If my principal asked me Could I give a presentation during a faculty meeting on maybe a new technology or software or something in the building? Then that was something that I did. We did have district-wide staff developers, but they weren't always available. And sometimes there were just things very specific to our building that my principal wanted me to share with the rest of the faculty. So I might have to take my time to plan and prep and teach the staff at a faculty meeting. Also, there were things that as the school library teacher that you, especially technology-wise, that you might be the first one in your building to learn or take advantage of. There will be people that come to you as a resource for the technology, and you will, in a very casual way, not formal like a faculty meeting, but just on a one-on-one basis, people are going to come to you and ask for help. So, on the topic of technology, the library is really a pioneer of technology. In the building, very often you are the technology person, depending on how your school district staffs the building. Very often, the librarian and the technology person are one and the same. So where I worked, we did have a tech aide that was there to troubleshoot and to provide tech in a lot of ways, but not there to be an instructor or a teacher. That is the job of the staff developer, but often you are doing those things as well. Especially once you build a relationship with the faculty in your building and they know you well, they trust you, or they see, they know you know what you're doing. And as a librarian, you're always helpful. It's a very service-oriented job. Not only are you there to provide resources and lessons to the students, but you're there for your faculty and staff as well. And they will come to you. Some school librarians are actually in charge of the technology in their building. For example, Chromebooks, smart boards. If you are in a building where there's not already, at this point, many schools have a smart board in every classroom. But if they don't, when smart boards were first rolled out, they were literally rolled out on wheels. And so we had about 4 in the building, and teachers would sign up for them and sign them out. So there was always a lot of troubleshooting with the setup of that as well. In many buildings, it is the librarian's responsibility to be in charge of rolling smart boards, projectors, Chromebooks for the students. Some places, every student has their own personal Chromebook, but in a lot of elementary schools, the Chromebooks are on carts and they're just signed out by grade level, by classroom. It really depends on your district and the finances and how they've rolled out technology. But you, as a school librarian, are going to play a very big role. Even if there is a technology person in your building, a lot of it is going to be part of your job. So a big part of the job, as I've been saying, is being a resource for the building. You're a resource for your students, but also for the faculty as well. Your primary role as a school library teacher is to support the curriculum and to support the reading interests of the students. Because that is your main job, you will be working with every faculty member in the building, every support staff in the building, and every student in the building. Finding resources, helping them with any information need they have. It's very curriculum based. Let's talk about the books for a minute. Because even though I said it's not just about books, a lot of it is about books as well. You will be managing, running, maintaining a library full of books. It is your responsibility to know the curriculum for every grade level, because you will be ordering the books, reviewing and researching the best books, the best reviewed books for that curriculum, for those grade levels. There's a lot of research involved, but you will be the one ordering and purchasing them as well. And so everything that you buy, you want it to either align to the curriculum or be of an interest to the students, because that is your primary purpose in the building, as I said. Not only will you be ordering the books, but you will be processing the orders. You will be labeling the books if they don't come pre-labeled, but maybe you have an organizational kind of labeling system within your own building. So even if you order the books pre-labeled from the book company, there may be additional steps and processing that you need in order to get the books ready for to be shelved. And yes, you will be shelving the books. If you are fortunate enough to have an aide or assistant in the library, maybe you are not shelving the books, but you're teaching someone and directing someone and supervising someone in reshelving the books. You'll be repairing the books. I always had a book hospital near my desk where the students put any hurt or injured books. But at some point in your day or a week, you have to get around to repairing those books or removing them from the collection. So you're always maintaining the collection. Anything that has to do with the collection will be your job. You might have an aide or an assistant that scans the books out for you during your class time, but if you don't, then you will be scanning the books out to the students. In the school district that I worked in, we were a one-man show. So we did everything. There were no aides or assistants in the library, and that is a district-wide decision. So it depends from district to district whether they hire that extra support staff for you or not. As far as reshelving the books, I was fortunate that sometimes if there was an extra sub in the building, that maybe for a period or two where they didn't have an assignment, the secretaries would send them to the library to help me out so I could have them help reshelve the books. And that was very much appreciated. But I also had to teach them how to do that. I had to teach them where everything was and how everything was organized, because what's worse than not having any help at all in the library is having bad help in the library. And by bad help, I mean is they're putting the books in all the places they don't belong. And so your books really need to be in the places where you have organized them on the shelves, because when a teacher or a student needs that book and you go to the shelf to find it and it's in a completely different section of the library, you may never find that book again until the end of the year when you do inventory. As far as the book management and reshelving, although I did not have an assistant or an aide, my administrator in my building did allow me to have parent volunteers, which was absolutely fabulous. I don't think I could have done my job without them. And they came in once a week or whenever was convenient for them before school. They would come before school when I wasn't teaching, as I was prepping for the day, and reshelve the books for me. And that was truly fortunate to have, because I checked out between 800 and 1,000 books every week to my 600 students. And those 800 to 1,000 books a week had to be scanned back in once they were returned, and they had to be put back on the shelf. And that is a big job in itself. Also, another opportunity that I had for help in the library was a partnership business program that I was involved in connected to our high school. So our high school had a transition program for their older students with special needs. It was a business partnership within the community where the students were able to go with their job coaches to places within the community and learn how to do jobs and trades. And so as a business partner, the job coach would come from the high school and I would arrange everything with the person in the high school in charge of the program. The students would come usually once a week and I would have things for them to do, and it depended on the level of that student's ability. Some students were capable of reshelving the books. Some of them could make photocopies for me. They could clean books. I've had students that came in the job coaching program that were capable of just putting all the books in number order or alphabetical order on the shelf. So they would read the shelves, straighten out the shelves, make sure everything was in order. And that's always needed in an elementary school librarian because the books are pretty messy. After I've had 5 or 6 classes come through in one day, as many as 150 to 200 students a day in the library, you always need someone to help you straighten out the books. I really enjoyed partnering with the high school in their transition job coaching program. That was a great opportunity. With that said, even though they saved me a lot of work in a lot of ways, it also created work for me because I had to come up with a list of things that needed to be done, a list of things where at multiple levels of ability, because the job coach could direct the student what to do and they knew what that individual student was capable of, but I didn't. So I needed to have multiple levels of jobs that I needed done at multiple levels of ability. I also needed to create, well, I don't know if I needed to, but I did because I just thought it was helpful for me and for the high school student. I would type up specific directions and instructions, just short, simple checklists and how-to instructions of what needed to be done. It was actually very helpful if I had a sub for 30 minutes or an hour that was sent down to help me out. I could give them those instructions as well as the students that were coming from the high school to help, as well as the parents so that would come before school and help. As I've said, I absolutely could not have run the library without all of that help, but I also had to coordinate it and prep for it. So that was time. I mentioned, kind of hinted before a little bit about meetings and collaboration. So meetings also would be part of something that you do as a school librarian. Meetings within your building, faculty meetings, committee meetings, also meetings, district-wide meetings that you're required to attend. You will have department meetings within your own department, library department. So there's someone in the district that's in charge of all the librarians, and that person might require you to have meetings with all of the librarians in the district. Where I worked once a month, we had a library department meeting, so all of the elementary, middle school, and high school librarians all met with our director, and that was once a month. So that is usually took place at the end of the school day, so that was an extra thing you did outside of the school day. You were required to do that. There are times where you may have special area meetings since you don't have a department or a grade level within your building, like many of the other teachers. You might get together with the art teacher, the music teacher, the gym teacher, and kind of be a department yourself within the building. Often people refer to those as special areas, and that's what you would be, a special area teacher. I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit, but going back to technology, being one of the technology resources in your building, you might also be the person that runs the website. The first 10 years that I worked in my building, I was the web slinger, as it was referred to, and I had no prior experience about websites or how to build a website or run a website or maintain a website, but it was my responsibility to learn how to do that. And there was a staff developer in the district who saved me over and over again. He took the time to set everything up and train me how to do it. At the time, the first building website that I had to create, I had to use a program called Dreamweaver. And any of you that know Dreamweaver or web development, that it's very complicated and not intuitive, and especially to a person who had no experience whatsoever. So yes, my staff developer, he saved me. But I spent hours and hours and hours creating a website from scratch, and then maintaining and running the website, creating my own web page, which if you are not responsible for the website of the entire building, you most likely will be responsible to keep and maintain your own web page for your library. 20 years ago, it was a much bigger deal than today. Today, things are much more simplified. And I think that most school districts are much more streamlined with their websites as well. So it might not be as big of a deal now as it was a long time ago. Things are easier, and the programs and software, everything is much easier than it was 20 years ago. But it's still something that you might have to think about, that might be your responsibility, that you will have to maintain, at the very least, your own web page if it's required by your district. As the librarian in the building, you will be researching constantly. You'll be researching what are the best resources, books, programs, software, things that are useful tools for your students and for your faculty. So researching best practices in librarianship, how to make the most and bring the best to your teachers and to your students. You will always be researching how to be the best, and possibly joining organizations like the American Association for School Librarians or the ALA, or maybe you have a local group of librarians, so that you are always keeping on top of what is the most current and best practices for school librarians. Along those lines is advocacy. Why school libraries matter. This is going to be a big topic, especially in this era that we're living in today, but always, 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 as a school librarian, you are always advocating for the benefits of school libraries. And I feel like even when I was in library school myself, it was just something always ingrained in you that you had to advocate for the library, justify what you do all day and every day, and marketing for the library, why library is important, how libraries support the curriculum. It's just an ongoing type of a situation. Then there are many, many people that truly value what you do in the library for the teachers, for the students, and many of the teachers will learn how important you are, because you are going to be serving them and being a resource for them and being helpful to them, so that they are going to turn to you many times once they know you and trust you and realize what it is you have to offer. But you're going to spend a lot of time marketing that and selling yourself to the teachers, to the community, and oftentimes to your administrator. Not all administrators believe in the value of the library. Some absolutely do, but others don't because they don't know what you do. So it is really your responsibility to put yourself out there and show them what it is that you have to offer. And that will take time and effort, but it's worth it. I say it in a casual way, but the teaching itself is a big deal, and you will be teaching. So you will always constantly be learning how to be a better teacher. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of reflection on what worked, what didn't work. And with all of that comes managing behaviors. So this is something also that takes time and learning and effort. You are managing the flow of your library. Part of your responsibility is the physical setup of your library. How is this going to flow? Where the students can work the best, the most seamlessly, where the least amount of behaviors, like behaviors that you don't want in the library, to keep the students focused and engaged. And there is a lot of planning in that, learning how to manage, and I don't mean control when I say manage, but learning how to bring out the bests in the students, because elementary school students, they, for the most part, are really happy to be there and they really want to learn. They're curious, they're excited. I always say it's on you to set the tone and the enthusiasm. If you're excited and enthusiastic about your lessons and about what's happening in the library, your students will be too. With that said, there is going to be a lot of behaviors and dealing with children in the best possible way, or positive way, I should say, and that is a huge learning curve for every teacher. I always said being a mom has helped me so much in being a teacher, because you understand kids' heads a little bit, but kids are so different, and just learning how to get them be their best is definitely a learning curve. And the only way to learn all of that is through time, through other teachers. There are some teachers absolutely gifted at getting kids to be so excited to do what they want and to be engaged and to have so much fun they don't even realize how much they're learning. That is a gift, but it's also a skill, and the only way to learn that is through time. So that is going to be part of your job as well, as to manage the kids in that way. Another responsibility that you may have as a librarian is to have unrelated duties within your building. And so this is also a district-wide decision and a building decision. It's really up to administration at whatever level that decides what it is that you are going to do. Where I worked, special area teachers had duties, and by duties I mean lunch duty, bus duty, walker duty. I had a very fair principal. She was very fair to the special area teachers. She made sure that these duties rotated. In our building, it was special area teachers and support staff, such as the reading and speech teachers. They also had duties as well. And so every month, our duties rotated, but I could have lunch duty every Tuesday during a period, like once a week, and then I might have bus duty every morning for 1 month, and then bus duty every afternoon for another month. And it is 100% dependent, like I said, on your administrator and how they decide they want to utilize their staff to cover these responsibilities. Some school districts have outside aides that come in and are responsible for maybe lunch duty or recess duty. In my district, the teachers covered this. They didn't have outside aides that covered duties like that. But it's good to know that that is something that is very typical and you really have no control over that. And just anticipate it that that might be the case, that you might have lunch duty or bus duty or something totally not related to being a school library teacher. Clubs. So clubs is the last thing, and depending on your school district, it might be something that they can ask you to do as part of your duty, or it might be something extra that you could volunteer to do and possibly get a small stipend to execute it. And that is after school clubs, before school clubs, or even clubs during the day. So there were times on and off, different years, where I had a technology club and other clubs that I ran, sometimes with another teacher or on my own. In my district, most after-school activities and clubs you had to apply for, and then the principal decided what it was that she wanted, was either approved or not approved through your administrator, through the district, but that was kind of how it worked. So not every year did I run a club. It depended on what was going on in my life. If I felt I had the extra time to stay an hour longer at school and run a club, and sometimes it was the district just didn't have the budget for clubs. One program, I guess I'll call it, that I did run, that it was not necessarily a club, but I called it the Library Leaders. And that was something that I ran for 5th grade students were eligible to be library leaders, and 4th grade students as well. I incorporated later in the later years that I was teaching. So the library leaders, they filled out an application. If they were approved to become a library leader, then they would come down to the library the last 10 minutes of the day as the kids were packing up, getting ready for the bus. And what they would do is walk around the library. I had a list, so that's another thing that I kind of organized and trained the library leaders. And they would have a checklist of things to do. So maybe they would sharpen the pencils, put all the chairs up onto the tables. I had a little carpet sweeper for the little area carpet rug that the students sat on, and they would carpet sweep the rug. They would pull the blinds down. They would just do a general sweep of the library, picking up any stray books. It was basically just straightening up the library at the end of the day. But having those library leaders was super helpful, and it was also a great way to connect with the kids, because a lot of times they would come down, they would be done in 1 or 2 minutes. I would have 4 or 5 of them come down each afternoon, and then they would just chat with me for 5 minutes before they went off to the bus. So some years I had so many applicants and I just assigned them a different day of the week. And it was just a nice thing, like a nice privilege as a 5th grader that you got to come and do that. 4th grade, after a few years, I started allowing 4th graders to be library leaders, but the 4th graders, I would let them come down during their lunch period. So they had special passes. They would eat their lunch and then they would come down to the library for the rest of the day. So if I did not have a class during their lunch period, then I would teach them to straighten up the books, make sure the books were all in the right section, and give them like sections that they were responsible for. So if I had a couple of 4th graders and they were in charge of all the picture books, they would come down and they would straighten out everything. And they always did a pretty good job. And especially if I had a lot of kindergarten classes that day, the picture book section could be pretty crazy. And it was nice. They loved the responsibility of it. and they kind of owned that. Even sometimes when they were there during their regular scheduled library time, I would see them go over to their section and really own it. So that was a great opportunity for the fourth graders, and I was really glad that I had thought to do that. If I had classes going on while the fourth graders had lunch, when they would come down as leaders, I don't know why it worked out that way, but it always kind of worked out that I had kindergarten or first grade classes, so they would come in and be helpers to those little ones. And so while those students were checking out books, they would go around and help them. And so that was great too. I just loved that. And that was kind of an unplanned thing that became of that. And it really worked out great. And then most of those fourth grade library leaders, once they became fifth graders, they became my end of the day fifth grade library leaders as well. But it was really a positive experience. And I know it was, especially because every year what would happen is I would have a couple of fourth grade students apply and then start coming. And then within a week or two, all of a sudden I would have more fourth graders coming and asking me, could I be a library leader too? And so word got out that they really enjoyed it. So it was a win-win all around, that whole fourth grade library leader situation. But once again, that is more on you. It's more management and preparation and training to get those fourth graders to know what to do and to stay on task. But it was worth it. I feel like this is quite a long list, but it's a very realistic list. And as you can see, very little of that has to do with books. Although that is your primary theme, is books and reading and literacy in the library. Everything that you do, 90% of what you do actually has nothing to do with books. When you become an elementary school library teacher, you are always growing, reflecting, reinventing yourself. Flexibility. Flexibility is your number one asset, because as you can see, it's not just books. Okay, so that just about wraps it up for this video. If you like this video, well, please like and subscribe for more. And don't forget to support your school libraries, support your independent bookstores, and support your right to read.